She stood outside that hotel room door for what felt like an eternity, her hand trembling on the handle, her wedding dress still perfect, her makeup still flawless. But inside that room, behind that door, her entire future was about to collapse. What she saw in the next 10 seconds would destroy her. What she did about it would shock the entire country. Picture this. You've just married the love of your life. 200 guests. A ceremony so beautiful people were crying. Your father walked you down that aisle with tears in his eyes because he finally believed you'd found someone worthy of you. Your mother couldn't stop smiling. Your best friend caught the bouquet and joked that she'd be next. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as you dreamed since you were a little girl playing bride with your grandmother's lace curtains. But what happens when perfect is just a mask? What happens when the person you trusted most in this world, the person you just promised forever to, has been living a lie? And what happens when you discover that lie not weeks later, not months later, but on your wedding night, in a luxury hotel, with your heart still racing from saying, "I do"? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is the story of Sarah Mitchell, a 32-year-old elementary school teacher from Austin, Texas, who thought she knew everything about the man she married. For 3 years, Sarah and David Chen had been what everyone called couple goals. They met at a charity fundraiser where Sarah was volunteering and David was representing his tech startup. He walked up to her table, smiled that devastating smile of his, and asked if she believed in love at first sight, or if he should walk by again. Cheesy, sure, but Sarah laughed. And that laugh, she'd later tell her friends, was the beginning of everything. David was everything Sarah had hoped for in a partner. He remembered the little things, how she took her coffee with oat milk and a ridiculous amount of cinnamon, how she got anxious in crowded spaces and would squeeze his hand 3 times when she needed to leave, how she loved old bookstores and would spend hours just breathing in that papery smell. He supported her dreams of opening a literacy program for underprivileged kids. He showed up to every school play she directed, even the painfully awkward middle school productions. He called her mom on her birthday. He helped her brother move apartments twice without complaining. He was patient when she needed space, attentive when she needed comfort. Everyone who knew them said they were meant to be. The proposal came on a trip to Big Sur. They were hiking along the coastal trails, the Pacific Ocean crashing against the rocks below, when David suddenly stopped. Sarah thought he'd seen a whale or something because he had that look on his face, that frozen awe. But when she turned around, he was on one knee, holding a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, tears streaming down his face. He told her she was his home, his safe place, the person who made him believe in goodness again. Sarah said yes before he even finished asking. They chose October for the wedding. Sarah had always loved fall, the way the air turned crisp and everything smelled like possibility. They planned for 8 months. Every detail mattered to Sarah. She hand-wrote each invitation. She worked with a local florist to create centerpieces using flowers from her grandmother's garden. She chose a playlist that told their love story through songs. David seemed just as invested. He tasted cake flavors with her, debated napkin colors, practiced his vows out loud while driving. His best man, Marcus, joked that David was more excited about the wedding than most grooms, that he must really love Sarah to care about whether the tablecloths were ivory or cream. 3 months before the wedding, during one of David's frequent business trips to Seattle, something changed. He met someone at a conference. Her name was Jennifer Hayes, a 29-year-old marketing executive with a sharp wit and an even sharper ambition. They had drinks after a panel discussion, then dinner. Then Jennifer was in his hotel room and David was making a choice that would detonate his entire life. It didn't stop there. What started as 1 mistake became 2, then 5, then a pattern David couldn't seem to break. Every trip to Seattle meant seeing Jennifer. Every lie to Sarah became easier. He'd tell Sarah he was exhausted from meetings, too tired to FaceTime, when really he was having dinner with Jennifer at some trendy restaurant. He'd say the project was demanding late nights when he was actually in Jennifer's apartment watching movies and pretending he wasn't engaged. The worst part? Jennifer knew about Sarah. David had told her from the start. And Jennifer, whether out of rebellion or genuine feelings or simple selfishness, didn't care. She told herself that if David really loved Sarah, he wouldn't be with her. That if the relationship was solid, she wouldn't be able to shake it. She convinced herself she wasn't doing anything wrong because David was the one making the choice. As the wedding approached, David told himself he'd end it with Jennifer. He'd break it off after the wedding, start fresh, be the husband Sarah deserved. It was classic compartmentalization. He could keep these two lives separate. He could have his last taste of freedom and then commit fully to Sarah. Jennifer, meanwhile, had other plans. When David told her 2 weeks before the wedding that they needed to stop, that he was getting married and it wasn't fair to anyone, Jennifer smiled and said she understood. But understanding and accepting are two different things. She'd grown attached, more than attached. She'd started imagining a future where David left Sarah for her, where she was the one wearing the ring. And when he tried to walk away, something inside her snapped. She decided if she couldn't have him, she'd make sure Sarah knew what kind of man she was marrying. So Jennifer booked a flight to Austin. She got a hotel room. And she waited for the perfect moment to destroy everything. The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather. 72 degrees, cloudless sky, that golden light photographers dream about. Sarah woke up in her childhood bedroom surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her maid of honor, Rebecca, had organized mimosas and a playlist of Sarah's favorite songs. They laughed while doing makeup, cried during the first look photos. Sarah's father held her hands before walking her down the aisle and told her she looked exactly like her mother on their wedding day, that she was making the right choice, that David was a good man. The ceremony was beautiful. David's voice cracked when he said his vows. Sarah cried through all of hers. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," David pulled Sarah close and whispered, "I love you," before their lips even met. The reception was everything Sarah had imagined. The speeches were heartfelt and funny. The food was incredible. The dancing went on for hours. Sarah's grandmother, 87 years old, danced with David and told him to take care of her grandbaby or else. Everyone laughed. David promised. He meant it in that moment, or maybe he wanted to mean it. The night ended around 11. Guests filtered out. Family hugged them goodbye. Rebecca helped Sarah change out of her reception dress into a simpler white dress for the hotel. David's best man, Marcus, drove them to the Fairmont, a luxury hotel downtown where they'd booked the penthouse suite for 3 nights. They arrived around midnight. The suite was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a king bed with rose petals, champagne on ice, everything perfect. Sarah kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch, laughing about how her feet were going to hate her tomorrow. David poured them both champagne. They toasted to forever, to new beginnings, to the life they'd build together. Then David's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face changed, just for a second. A flash of something Sarah couldn't quite read. He said it was work, that he needed to take it, that it would just be 5 minutes. Sarah waved him off, said she'd start getting ready for bed. David stepped into the hallway. Sarah changed into the lingerie she'd bought specifically for tonight. White lace, delicate. She felt nervous and excited and completely in love. She waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. She texted David. No response. She called. It went to voicemail. A weird feeling started creeping into her chest. That intuition women talk about. That knowing something's wrong even when you can't explain why. Sarah put on the hotel robe and stepped into the hallway. The corridor was quiet, dimly lit. She walked toward the elevators, thinking maybe David had gone to the lobby for better reception. But then she heard something. Laughter, a woman's laugh, coming from a room 3 doors down from theirs, room 417. The door was slightly ajar. Sarah's heart started pounding. She told herself it was nothing. Hotel guests, strangers, but her feet kept moving toward that door. She could hear voices now, a woman saying something she couldn't quite make out. And then David's voice, unmistakable, saying, "Babe, we can't do this here." Sarah's hand reached for the door handle. She pushed it open. The room was identical to theirs, same layout, same windows, but the scene inside was nothing like what should have been happening on her wedding night. David was sitting on the edge of the bed. His tie was loose, his shirt partially unbuttoned, and standing in front of him, wearing a hotel robe that barely covered her, was a woman Sarah had never seen before, Jennifer. Time did that thing where it stops and speeds up simultaneously. Sarah saw everything in hyper detail. The way Jennifer's hand was resting on David's shoulder, the glasses of wine on the nightstand, David's shoes kicked off by the door, the look of absolute horror that spread across David's face when he saw Sarah standing there. Jennifer turned. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Sarah heard herself say, "Who is this?" Her voice was calm, eerily calm. David stood up so fast he almost tripped. "Sarah, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. Jennifer, to her credit, or perhaps her cruelty, didn't try to hide. She looked at Sarah with something almost like pity and said, "I'm Jennifer. David's been seeing me for 3 months." Sarah felt the floor tilt. 3 months. That meant he'd been cheating through the engagement party, through her bridal shower, through the rehearsal dinner last night. While she was picking out flowers and writing vows and imagining their future, he was with this woman. David was talking now, words tumbling out desperate and incoherent. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. "I love you, Sarah. Please. We just got married. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. She was looking at Jennifer, really looking at her, and seeing something in the other woman's eyes that chilled her. Satisfaction. Jennifer wanted this, wanted Sarah to see, wanted to blow everything up. Sarah took a step backward, then another. David reached for her and she flinched away. "Don't touch me." Her voice was steel now. "Don't you dare touch me." She turned and walked back to their suite. David followed, pleading, "Sarah, please. Let me explain. Let's talk about this." But what was there to talk about? What explanation could possibly make this okay? Sarah grabbed her purse, her phone, her shoes. She didn't bother changing out of the robe. She just walked straight to the elevator. David was still following, still talking, his voice getting more panicked. "Where are you going?" "Sarah, please don't leave like this. We can work through this." The elevator doors opened. Sarah stepped inside. David tried to follow, but she held up her hand. "If you get in this elevator, I will scream. I will call security and tell them you're harassing me." David froze. The doors closed. Sarah made it to the lobby before she started shaking. The night clerk looked up, concerned. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" Sarah shook her head. She couldn't speak. If she opened her mouth, she'd shatter completely. She walked outside into the October night air and finally let herself cry. Rebecca arrived 20 minutes later. Sarah had called her from the lobby, barely able to get the words out. Rebecca found her sitting on a bench outside the hotel, still in the robe, mascara running, shaking. Rebecca didn't ask questions. She just wrapped her jacket around Sarah and drove her home. Back to Sarah's apartment, the place she was supposed to have given up because she was moving into David's house. Their house, the house they'd picked out together. Rebecca stayed the whole night, made tea, let Sarah cry, listened when Sarah could finally talk. The story came out in broken pieces. The phone call, the open door, Jennifer's face, David's lies. 3 months. 3 months of betrayal while Sarah planned their future. How do you come back from that? How do you trust again? Rebecca held her friend and had no answers because there weren't any good ones. Some things break you in ways that don't heal cleanly. Some betrayals cut too deep. By morning, Sarah had made a decision. She wasn't going to hide. wasn't going to pretend this didn't happen, wasn't going to protect David from the consequences of his choices. She posted a single message on social media. No details, just this. The wedding was beautiful. The marriage lasted 6 hours. I'm okay. I'll be okay. That's all I'm saying for now. The post went viral within hours. Friends started calling, then family, then people Sarah hadn't talked to in years. The story spread. Wedding guests who'd been there less than 12 hours ago were now reading that the marriage had imploded before the honeymoon. David tried to call, texted dozens of times. "Sarah, please answer. I need to explain. It's not what you think. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can fix this." Sarah blocked his number. 2 days after the wedding, Sarah's mother convinced her to at least hear David out. Not to forgive him, but to get closure, to understand what happened so she could move forward. Sarah agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, neutral ground, public place. David looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red. His hands shook when he picked up his coffee. He tried to explain. The stress of the business, the pressure of the wedding, meeting Jennifer and feeling like he had one last chance to be reckless before settling down. He swore it meant nothing, that Jennifer meant nothing, that Sarah was the person he wanted to spend his life with. But Sarah just sat there, calm in a way that frightened him, and asked the only question that mattered. "If I hadn't walked in on you, would you have told me?" David hesitated. That hesitation was the answer. Sarah stood up. She told him she was filing for annulment, that she never wanted to see him again, that he'd taken something precious and destroyed it, and she'd never forgive him for that. David broke down, cried in the middle of the coffee shop, begged her not to give up on them. But Sarah was done. She'd spent 3 years building a life with someone who'd thrown it away for a few months of excitement. She wasn't going to spend another minute trying to fix what he'd broken. The annulment went through quickly. They'd been married less than a week. No shared property, no kids, just a marriage that never really started. Sarah threw herself into work. Her students became her focus. She started the literacy program she'd been planning, the one David had always supported. Except now she did it alone, and it thrived. Within 6 months, the program was helping 50 kids. Within a year, 100. Sarah found purpose in the wreckage. She found herself again, the version of herself that existed before David, the version that didn't need someone else to feel complete. Jennifer and David didn't last. Of course they didn't. Relationships built on lies rarely do. According to mutual friends, they dated for 2 months after the wedding before imploding. Turned out Jennifer had been lying too, about her job, her past, who she really was. David ended up alone, exactly as he deserved. He tried to reach out to Sarah a year later, sent a long email apologizing again, telling her he'd been in therapy, that he understood now what he'd lost, that he'd spend the rest of his life regretting what he did. Sarah read the email once, deleted it. 3 years have passed now. Sarah is 35, still teaching, still running her literacy program. She went on a few dates. Nothing serious. She's not sure she's ready for serious. Maybe she never will be. And that's okay. She's learned that happiness doesn't require a partner, that she's enough on her own, that the person who was supposed to cherish her forever couldn't even make it through their wedding night. So here's what I want to know. If you were Sarah, standing outside that hotel room door, knowing what you were about to see, would you have opened it? Or would you have walked away, let yourself live in ignorance a little longer? And when you found out the truth, what would you have done? Would you have tried to work through it, demanded answers? Or would you have walked away like Sarah did, knowing that some things can't be fixed? Think about the people you trust, the ones you'd bet your life on. Are you sure they're who you think they are? Because Sarah was sure about David, right up until the moment she wasn't. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you think Sarah did the right thing. Tell me if you've ever had someone you trusted completely betray you, Because stories like this, they're not just about one woman and one wedding night. They're about trust, about love, about the lies we tell ourselves and the lies other people tell us. They're about how fast everything can fall apart, how one choice can destroy years of building, how the person sleeping next to you might be a stranger. This is real. This happened, and it could happen to anyone. So hold the people you love accountable, trust your instincts, and never ignore that voice in your head telling you something's wrong. Because sometimes that voice is the only thing standing between you and devastation. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of your own life, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And stay tuned, because next week we're covering another story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. This is real life, unfiltered, raw, and sometimes heartbreaking. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not just on the day they say I do.